everybody. My name is Mike Jackson. I'm the founder of Black Tech Talent. Today we have Chris Assigbe with us. He works over at Google. He's going to tell us a little bit about his journey. We're actually making some history today because you're our first interview for the new website. And
Right.
we're also launching during a global pandemic as well. So, so we got two history in the makings going on. So
Interesting.
why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about your role currently at Google and what you do in that role?
Right. So thank you very much, Mike. Thank you for allowing me to be the first in this series. So I really appreciate it. Google Home. um, right now, I am what you call a technical solution manager at Google. My team specifically works with some of the big partners of Google in the publishing world. So think of people like the New York Times, Reddit, and so on. So we assist them in monetizing the platform. So, for instance, their apps, websites. Those people want to monetize them. They by monetizing them, I mean putting ads on
Yeah,
those sites or apps. So there is a team that helps them onboarding onto our system, help them set up, and my team specifically own the technical interaction with their engineers and technical people going from there.
awesome, awesome. So I kind of want to, now that the people kind of know what you do and what your position is, I kind of want to go back to the beginning and kind of just go through your journey, because what we want to do with Black Tech Talent as an organization is we want to encourage people to get into technology. We want to show people that it can be done, especially Black people. That's why it's Black Tech Talent. And we also want to educate, some of the corporations that would be hiring us and partnering with us, what our journey looks like as well, getting into tech and being inspired and kind of climbing up the ranks. So what was kind of your first introduction to the possibility of being in technology?
It, that's a very interesting question. It actually dates back to my middle school years. I am originally from a small West African country called Togo,
Okay, I've heard of
and
Togo.
yeah, and when I was in middle school, there was this juke in Germany. My school in Togo was created by a German missionary.
Okay.
So um, the school maintained really good relationship with Germany. And so it turned out when I was in middle school, a Duke in Germany donated about 40 computers to our school. It was a big deal because it was, if I remember well, the very first school, at least middle school, that had a lab of with that many computers, right? And I was among the very first batch of people that were introduced to this computer and formed on these computers and all of that. And then we trained other people later on ourselves. So that's how I got involved with computers at first. And then at home also, my big brother was a developer back then. So we used to be interested. He wouldn't let us touch his computers, but we will take his documentation. I remember back then we were learning things like Visual Basic and all of that. So it just grew from there. Little by little, I was getting more interested in knowing what computers are made of. For at first, our lab at school wasn't even hooked to the internet. It was just learning DOS. And then when Windows GUI came on, we started learning with Windows 95, I believe, back then. And then we did 98 when that 98 came out. And then one, my brother and one of a family friend also introduced me to the internet a couple of years later, and I opened my first email account. We didn't have internet at home. We had to go to what were called cyber cafes, internet cafes.
Hmm.
So he took me there, opened an account for me on Hotmail. I remember. I still have that account. So that's where the interest grew from. When I graduated high school and was looking for things to do, I was fortunate again at that time because um, the the there is a huge organization all across Africa and the world called the Catholic University. When I was graduating from high school, they were coming into Togo with their Togolese unit, which was going to cover technologies.
Nice.
So that year when I graduated, it was just I just fell right into it. Went to that school and um, did telecommunication and a bit of computer science back then. And when I moved to the States in 2009, I just continue in tech by going into networking. I did networking for my undergrad, and when I was looking for school to go to grad school, I was interested in security, and that's what I did as well.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So another thing we want to do is kind of we want to definitely keep it real and show some of the disadvantages that we may have, so that we can come up with a solution, not for a pity party, but so we can all work together to work on a solution. But we all also want to talk about some of the different advantages we've had, and you just spoke about like getting those computers in there and being able to learn and kind of being on it early and then teaching others, and then this whole other program coming and being able to take advantage of that and come over here. So throughout your journey, what have been some of the maybe disadvantages, being black, coming from a whole different country that was still getting on board with internet and email and stuff, and then just the time frame too. We're in a whole different time frame now when it comes to access. So, what were some of the advantages and what were some of the disadvantages?
Well, let me start with the advantages first, because there's a whole litany of
Yeah.
disadvantages. But the advantages were just I was just lucky, really. First with the donation of computers while I was in school, and then things just fell into place when I was graduating high school. Also, that school opened up, and I went right into that. And then cons- um, um, after that, I moved to the States and continued in my passion with the computers. Right. So that in a sense was a privilege because I reckon that there is a lot of people even here in the States or back home that don't have that opportunity.
Hmm.
So I definitely am grateful to have had those opportunities, and they were just blessings for me. One thing really that I have to highlight there, the school I went to, and that was my like they back home. I mean, the university, the Catholic University, they gave us computers, so laptops, and that was the very first time I've had a computer throughout my life. So it was in school, and then also when I moved here in the state, the school I went to, they gave us a computer. So it, it, those were the advantages. However, some of the disadvantages that we have personally um, faced is, for instance, to understand computers, you have to um, play with them.
Yes.
and you can read about it, but if you don't play with them, you won't be able to understand it really well. So I didn't have a computer until I got into school, into university. So that I was definitely, compared to my peers here in the States, I was definitely at a disadvantage, right? And even when I got a computer in the States or and back home, there are things you couldn't do. I couldn't, for instance, take apart that computer and look inside it because it was the only thing that I had.
Right.
Right, right. So I couldn't do that. But also, you talk about the constraints when moving to the States here. I often say to people that um, not that I didn't realize that I was a black man, but when I moved to the States is when it came full circle, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, what I mean by that is back home, everyone was in the same boat, right? Um, 1 second, my
No
computer
problem.
just. Let me- Okay, back home, everyone was in the same boat. We were all black for the
Yeah.
most part. Um, every injustice you might face was faced as a whole, right? The community was facing it as a whole. So you don't being black isn't the most forefront thing you have. You have other problems that you deal with separately. But moving to America, you feel that you are different, and we just the constraints of the societies that society puts around black people make it so that you don't think of all of the possibility of things you can do,
Hmm.
right? I have the privilege also not growing in the US where all of those constraints was with me the whole time I was from when I was born to when I grew up. So I only got dropped into it.
Yeah.
So be coming in here and facing that was eye opening for me because um, I was it was in school that I started with things like people not knowing where I was from and always thinking I was not smart at all when they first meet me.
Yeah.
um, to weird questions in school. You think in university people will be a little bit more sophisticated, but questions like do you live in trees and all of that were asked of me. And at first, it really startled me, and I took it really bad when I first moved here.
Hmm.
But then once you understand what those constraints are and having the privilege of not having those constraints before, you kind of have to navigate around it, and you are a little bit um, equipped to navigate around it, not having it around
Yeah.
you the whole your whole life. So I decided that I was going to succeed at no matter what. I'm going to go to school, and even like in the African community here, right? So I remember when I first moved here, and I said I was going to continue being doing computer stuff. People in the community where I lived in St. Paul were advising my mom and me that computer is not what Africans do here. They go to nursing school and all of that,
Hmm.
right? So there's like a path you were designed that was designed for you to go to take, and if you didn't take it, you were an outcast. But I was determined to succeed. I stuck to my gun, and then went to school. It wasn't easy. There were decisions there. Like one of the disadvantages also moving here, people don't tell you how the school system works here, how expensive it is, how much debt you might get into after you go after you finish with your school, right? And how that debt can impact your financial status later on. It's not an education we get in Africa because we don't have a concept of credit, for instance, in Africa, right?
Mm,
Um, so you come in here and you want the best for you and you want to go to school. So the first one of the first mistakes I made was I went to school, but I went to a very expensive school, right? And came out of um, with my bachelor's undergrad with a lot of debt. I wouldn't have done it if I knew what I know now, but it was part of the growing pains.
right.
I'm still grateful to have gone through it. And then you go into corporate America, where you you are met with the skepticism of not how you call it, um, be deserving of what you have or
Right.
the role that you have. Um, um, but all of that was just for me. I look at it as a growing pain. I look at it as um, constraint of society that we can learn from and just learn to work around it.
Mm,
Unfortunately, very early on in my career, I landed at Google back in 2013, and the experience changed a little bit there because this company is a little bit more progressive than most companies, and it generally cares about its employees. So the experience has been different, although even Google has a lot of ways to go when it comes to integrating Black people or minorities in general.
for sure, definitely. And that's you hit a couple things on the nose that I just want to highlight. So one, for anybody watching that may want to participate in different programs where you donate computers or refurbish computers for underserved communities. um those programs work. I mean, Chris is a product of that. I know a lot of other people are a product of that. You also spoke about uh the psychological effects of being Black and growing up in America and kind of having it consistently shoved in your face that you're different, that you're not the same, that you're not worthy, and that you're not as smart, versus coming over here. Because I think a lot of times people will look at, African Americans and go, well, you guys have been here the whole time. You had all the advantages and we had to come over here. So why aren't you further? And there's that psychological piece of, it's kind of like, when people train animals, right? And
Right.
it's a difference between an animal that's been kept in captivity its whole life and then trying to release it to the wild versus an animal that comes from the wild and now you're trying to train it to be in captivity. You can let that one go back in the wild. It still has its instincts, right? But that one that's been in captivity doesn't even know, what to hunt for and how to hunt, and it's just used to its foods being brought to it and stuff like that. And so, and the reason why I use that analogy is because, like you said, growing up here, especially because I'm based out of Minnesota, so like here, like every school you're going to go to is predominantly white. All your classmates are going to be predominantly white. I think I've had two, and I went to 11 different schools before graduating. I only ever had two Black teachers. One was a
Mm.
history teacher, and the other, I think, was an English teacher, maybe. So,
Wow.
and that was from elementary school all the way up to like 11th grade,
Yeah.
right? To have one and then have the other one at the end of the spectrum, right? And so, your nurses are white, your doctors are white, the lawyers are white, the judges are white, the cops are white, the way they portray us in the media, which is why you would get questions like, do you live in trees? Right? Stuff like that. And then so that's one thing I want to highlight, is that the struggles are a little bit different, even though it's still black at the end of the day. And the
Yeah.
other thing that you
I want
mentioned,
to add a little bit to that, if you don't mind.
yeah, go ahead.
I think as immigrants, sometimes we are not aware of that privilege,
Hmm.
and it is a privilege because you are not taught day in day out that you are less than nothing and that you can accomplish anything. It
Yeah,
is a privilege, and we need to recognize that part of the reason, not all of the reason, part of the reason why immigrants come in a place like this and can succeed sometimes and succeed without a lot of hardship is because we do not have that baggage with us.
yes,
And we need to be cognizant of that, and not uh, gloat that it's all because of our own accomplishment or merit that we've got to where we are. It's just because we aren't put in the same situation as people that grew up here and that were taught every day, shoved in their face that they're not going to succeed, that they're not worthy of the American experience. So
definitely,
just wanted to.
definitely. So now, the funny thing about that is then, so you made it here with an education from overseas, and then you had people from your community telling you not to get into technology and just to
That's right.
go to nursing school or do something in a hospital in that role. So um, that's something we as African Americans face as well, where it's like sometimes we dream and we're told our dreams are too big for what we're trying to do or our role. And I got that a lot. I even got that from relatives, and when you try to be empathetic to it, you
Mhm.
look at the different generations, and that may have been true of previous generations. And for the most time, they just want what's best for you, and they're placing their fears on you. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
just out of jealousy that they know you can go the distance and they didn't. They gave up, or they allowed themselves to be convinced. But these are just some of the things that um like we've been going through as a people. Besides the normal stuff, there's challenges in anything you want to do. Everyone, no matter what ethnic background or country or origin they come from, has challenges. But like, these are some of the extra challenges that people may not consider, and that's kind of some of the stuff we want to highlight um on this on the blog and on the podcast, because we want to create an ecosystem where the people who are interested in understanding can understand from both sides. So
Right.
yeah, so that was interesting as well. So now I kind of want to jump forward a little bit. So like, what was your initial feeling when you found out you were going to be working for Google?
Dude, it's quite interesting because I thought it was a scam at first, right? I was I was still in school. I was just about to finish my bachelor's degree, and I received an email on LinkedIn, um, um, asking if I would be interested in joining a program at Google. And uh, Google have so that's another thing for us black people, right? We put our own accomplishments so low that we don't see what we can do and what we are worthy of, right? So when I got that email, that message through LinkedIn, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was a Nigerian scam or just a scam. And I have to. I was with my girlfriend at the time. Just told me, "What do you have to lose?" You know, respond to them. If it's fake, then that's fine. If it's not, then you win anyway. You don't lose anything. And I have to thank her because I wasn't going to respond.
Yeah,
I just thought I was not ready for a
yeah,
company like that, right? So but then I responded and it turned out to be real. Went through the interview process. I I got an initial phone call and did a phone interview, and then got flew in from Minnesota to Michigan because I was going to work in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
in Ann Arbor. So went to Michigan for the interview. It was great. And then when I came back, I was not uh, thinking that they were going to call me back because I thought I had a bad day interviewing, right? But then they did call me back really shortly after that and offered me the position. Um, One interesting thing I wanted to say about this is sometimes we we have to make um, sacrifices to get to a place where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that when I was getting out of college, I had a number of offers, right, from different companies. And many companies at the time offered me way more than Google did. And I could have easily, and I was actually thinking about, you know, turning down the offer from Google. As crazy as it may sound, I was thinking about turning down the offer because I was thinking just in terms of monetary value and the debt that I had just incurred, right, from going to
Yeah.
school. I needed to pay that back. And I was thinking about going to grad school shortly after that. So um, while I was really excited and really um, felt validated for having gone through everything I had gone through till that point, I was also conflicted that the offer wasn't what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a couple of friends, a couple of advisors, mentors that told me sometimes it's not just the monetary value, right? It is the experience you're going to gain at a company of that standing, and even if you don't end up lasting there, you still have gone there, and that shows up on your resume,
Yes.
right? And then that what you may be losing at that moment in time, you will probably get later on, right? So that's how I accepted the offer and joined Google in 2013. Joined a program called the ITRP program. Is the IT residency program. It sits in the what an organization we call corporate engineering. It's a great program because the what it does is it takes in junior engineers, technicians, and put them in a technical role, but also move them around. You can do rotations in different parts of the company in the technical realm, and learn about the company inside out, learn about the technology that's used there, with a great deal of responsibility because I remember even being that entry level, we probably had some of the most access in the company. Um, so it was a great program that I was highly grateful for. Met some incredible people there that have forged the person that I am today. Some of my first managers were the best managers I've had in my whole life. Showed me the path, showed me how to navigate a culture like that. If so, you were talking about the hurdles that we go through, right? As Black people, when you get even in a company like this, those hurdles follow you, right? Because in a company like Google, we do performance review, but we do it differently from many other companies. You have to write your accomplishment yourself. We call it an accomplishment document where you write everything you've done over the span of a certain cycle, and then you have other people give feedback and all of that. But you have to write it yourself. And I coming from a culture where you are taught that you should never gloat your own accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
It's for others to recognize you, not you to gloat about it, or um, you should never be the first one to raise your hand and all of that. And the culture as Google can be really hard to navigate. And without those people, I'll have never been able to navigate. And even then, it took me years. And in some ways, I'm still struggling to fit in a culture like this.
Definitely. I noticed a couple things. So one, I definitely agree on the last point you made, where it's, about mentioning your own accomplishments or gloating and stuff like that. And so for anybody that doesn't know, I also own an event marketing platform, and we produce events and concerts, yacht parties, celebrity slumber parties, stuff like that. And the entertainment field is much more, image based, much more glamour based and accomplishment based. It's not always what you know, it's who you know when it comes to entertainment and stuff like that. And so a lot of times, especially in this market, uh, you have to mention your accomplishments and the different things that you've done in order to attract that crowd that's going to spend with you, that's going to work with you. But for me, I actually was like that as well for a long time. So it's funny
Right.
because the people who have met me maybe in the last 6 years, they're
Right.
like, "Oh, you're always posting this, about your accomplishments and this and that and blah blah blah." But if they go on any of my social media from maybe 2015 on back, I never even posted a selfie.
Right.
And then it was like, but not utilizing social media correctly, on a
Mhm.
personal level, was actually starting to hurt my different businesses, because social media was just becoming so big that it was like, don't advertise to us, don't just show the product, don't just, my profile picture just used to be my logo. It's like, we don't want to just see
Mhm.
your logo. And so I started, I see you got the sneakers in the background. Like, my first company was Sneakerheads Clothing. And so I would start, posting pictures of me rocking my outfits or my sneaker collection or my jewelry, or me traveling for business, and just doing stuff like that. So yeah, people who just started meeting me around that wave, where they're like, oh, you're like, conceited, or you like posting about yourself a lot. And it has nothing to do with that. It's just the way the world has changed. In different businesses, you have to. I had companies, I went from getting stores just based off of the, my clothing brand's lookbook, and
Mhm.
what we've done, and maybe a cosign from other stores, to how many Twitter followers do you have, how many Instagram followers do you have, well, call us
Mhm.
back when you have at least 2,000. And that was like in the early days when 2,000 was impressive, before people knew about buying followers and stuff like that. And
Right.
so yeah, it is definitely one of those things. But I've told people, even as recently as this year,
Mhm.
because I'll do a year review of what I've done, accomplished, and I put it on Facebook, and I put pictures and stuff like that. And I told a couple of friends to do it, and they were telling me that, oh, my girlfriend or my blah 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 said I shouldn't do this, and it's that same cultural thing. And I was like, hey, just do it. And they did it, and one of them landed a big celebrity as his client. He's an acting coach, and he landed a big name celebrity as his client because he posted all of his accomplishments, and he acts as well. So his features and the movies he'd been in. And somebody contacted him and said, hey, his manager contacted him and said, hey, my client's actually looking for an acting coach in Minnesota.
Mhm.
He's working out of LA, but right now he's living in Minnesota, and he's looking for an acting coach. And they connected, and now he has a new client.
Mhm.
He now he's raising some funds for a movie he's trying to produce. And same thing, he put down his resume and said, now I'm trying to do this. And now he's been raising money on GoFundMe because of that resume. So a lot of times for us, even as a kid, my parents would, I might ask for something, and they would be like, we know what you need, or we know what you want. If we see that
Mhm.
you deserve it, like, we'll give it to you. You don't have to ask for it.
That's right.
But as an adult, you're like, that typically comes from having lack of resources, lack of money. And that sense of pride, instead of saying we can't afford it, they kind of flip it on you and say, well, you haven't earned it yet, or you don't deserve it, or if it's time for you to have that, we'll give that to you. And so that's something that I've noticed has been part of a lot of other people's journey as well, and kind of having to break out of that mode of allowing somebody else to tell you what you deserve and when you deserve it and when you've earned it and what what have you done that's worth you being able to speak on it yourself. So a lot of times we end up having to speak up, because if we don't, we will get lost in the shuffle. Not everybody is watching what we're doing with praise, and some people who do know your moves, they're going to end up hating on you and purposely not mentioning that. So sometimes obviously you want to do it in a gracious, non-annoying way, but sometimes you just got to let people, you got to stun a little bit, let them know.
Yeah,
So
you do.
but
It's
the
not
other
always.
thing,
Sorry.
but
I
I was
was
gonna say the other thing that you mentioned was like when you got your offer from Google, and so connecting even with what we just said, do you feel like because they did a study, and the study showed that like a lot of Black people don't negotiate their wages. I know
Yeah.
I think women have it even worse when it comes to
Yes.
like asking for a raise and negotiating, but Black people are pretty low on the percentages that actually go that route. So when you got that offer, did you negotiate at all, knowing that you had bigger offers? And then also in hindsight, do you feel like you could have negotiated or not?
Right. That's a great question actually, because now I know a little bit of more about the game and how it's played. Right.
Mm.
Um, Generally at Google's, I believe salaries aren't negotiable, right? It's because everyone at the same level, like everyone that come, especially in that program, everyone that comes in the class, because we were about a class of 20, 18 people, I believe, that were hired at once, get paid the same. However, there are things you can negotiate on, things such as uh, stocks, stock
Mhm.
grants. You can negotiate on that. You can negotiate on bonuses and stuff like that, right? And I didn't know that at the time. I was just freshly coming out of college, um, and just took the offers for what they were, right? Instead of even like what you say, use the bigger offer that I had to try to get something different, and I didn't. But if I had to do it again, I'll try. Certainly, I know now that I can't do it, but at least as far as things like bonuses and um, stock grants, we'll have probably try harder there and try to get a media offer there. Um, but now I know that, and I've done it a number of times now. Although I haven't left the company, I um, tried. I've gotten offers from other companies, especially when I was in the Bay Area, to try to move there, and I negotiated very hard for other things, and frankly was fortunate to get them, but ended up staying at Google anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice,
yeah.
nice. So, what are some things that you feel like organizations in general could do to kind of improve on diversity? We get a lot of, I've worked with a lot of different organizations. Once again, like I co-produced BitCon, so if
Right.
anybody knows the Blacks in Technology Conference, and so I've worked with a lot of major corporations, especially in the tech space. And sometimes you hear things like we don't know where to find Black technologists, or we don't we didn't realize we had an issue with diversity until we really looked around and saw the numbers are small, or a lot of times they'll try to use white women as their diversity quota, right? um and so there's just a lot of either sometimes genuine lack of knowledge, and then sometimes it's just excuses, and they don't want to put forth a lot of effort. And one thing about Black tech talent is we want to be that bridge where we're doing that work for them. So, because
Mhm.
you're going to get a lot of people, well, we're a company and we're running a business and we hire, who comes to us type thing. And that's true. Like a business is a business, right? But your job is to make sure your business is operating at its best possible ability. And if you're not having a diverse group, different thinkers, different backgrounds, different experiences, then you can't possibly have the best company, right? And so
That's
we
right.
want to be able to be that bridge to say, listen, we're going to, have a community of members that we educate and we help and we source and we help find jobs, and we're going to have different organizations that want to partner with us and deal with us and really understand the community and position themselves as leaders in the community when it comes to hiring, when it comes to providing resources as well, so that they don't have to necessarily add those different divisions or departments in their companies where they feel like they don't want to do that. So then the problem continues to happen. So what are some like the things that you feel like could improve that for some of these organizations as well?
I think there is a number of things we can do, and to be frank, uh, um, I don't think companies and organizations are doing enough at all to, in terms of reach out to the black talent in tech, or even um, growing that talent from the ground up. Um, I've been involved for a couple of years now in a lot of efforts, outreach, and all of that, where I still meet young people, young black people that do not think there are black people at Google.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that every time I hear that, I leave it as some type of injustice, because if you think about it, if you don't think in a company such globally established at Google, there are black people, then you don't even push your ambition towards careers that lend you a job at a company such as that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think we should do a number of things, starting with educating our youngest in the STEM careers, right? And I'm not putting this solely on black people. We should do this, but uh, companies and society as a whole should also help do it,
Yeah.
right? Um, we should cultivate the appeal for STEM careers very early on in kids, right? Showing them how technology can be a good career, maths and science can be good careers, and you don't necessarily have to become just teachers. You don't have to put. You don't necessarily just have to become nurses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like I was told when I moved here. The other thing that we need to do is not only doing that outreach to educate people on the options that are available, but also accompany um, some of the initiatives that are done in actually providing the knowledge to those people. One of the things that I think Google does, one of those things is we have a partnership with some of the um, um, historical black university, where they get the students onto campus in Mountain View, where they teach them and people engineers teach them software engineering and all of that, and then I think they get through to an internship or something like that after the completion of the program. So that's a great program, right? Or
Yeah.
program like the one that I went to called ITRB, where you get to experience the company as a junior engineer or tech. Um, The other thing, so accompany the organizations and companies and things that you're trying to do, like with the initiative you just launching, accompany such initiatives where you already pull in the black talent and educating them on what to do and all of that and how to apply and all of that. So tap into that. So you don't have the excuse to say, "Oh, we didn't know.
Right.
We don't know how to reach out." You already have organizations that are doing that. Accompany them, work with them, and get into that pool of talent. Furthermore, we also need. Remember when I was talking to you about the fact that to understand computers, sometimes you have to get into it and take out the screws and all of
Yeah.
that. Um, we need to equip schools in underserved areas with the equipment that they need to have an effective learning environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did work at a school district in Minnesota, and I remember being astonished by the amount of technology we put into those kids' hands. There were middle schoolers that were getting iPads and all of that to take home sometimes and do their homework there, right? Um, if you have the there is definitely a technology called divide, and if we can work to make sure that schools in our underserved areas are also equipped, they can compete and have, even if the education itself isn't as good, human curiosity can lead people, the learners, to learn much more than they will have without having those,
Right.
right? I remember reading a story about, and I think it was turned into a movie about this kid in East Africa that built um, a I think a solar panel or something based off YouTube,
Mm.
based off internet, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and this is a region where it's not there, um like the internet is not great there, and devices, the very first device most people get is a mobile device, but kids don't have those. So he
Right.
had to go into like an internet cafe, just like I did back in the days, to learn about this. So can you imagine in America or everywhere else in the world where you put devices, you put the tools where they are needed in schools.
Yeah.
And obviously put safeguards around it so it doesn't become a distraction, but put the tools there. The imagination itself of humans can lead to something totally that we can't um, 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 like um, think of right now. Like
Yeah.
I believe wholeheartedly, if you put the resources into people's hands, in general, people will come up with a way to learn and discover and build that you won't have foreseen yourself.
Definitely. Definitely. Think that's great. And um I know, like, for me, we had when I was a kid, we had like an e-machine. I don't know if you remember e-machine computers, but
E-machine computer. No, I'm not sure. What is it?
yeah, they don't even make them anymore, I don't think. But um at that time, it was like e-machine was like kind of like it was like a $500 computer setup, like desktop setup, and that was like cheap, like at the time, because you were looking at 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 for like a good computer. And So we had that, and we didn't really do anything much on it. Google wasn't, as far as like a search engine, wasn't like, didn't have a lot of stuff on it. Obviously, there was no like tutorial websites, so like
Right.
YouTube didn't exist, stuff like this.
Right.
But we had it for basic things and played like games and stuff on it, and it had got really slow, right? And
Right.
we knew nothing about computers, so my family just looked at it like, "Oh, it's worthless. Like it's slow. Like it takes forever to load and turn on." This one we're still on dial-up, so imagine like your computer taking forever just to turn on, and then trying to get on like dial-up. And they were gonna throw it away, and I just asked, "Could I have it?" And they were like, "Yeah, you can have it. We don't want it." And I unscrewed the back because it was so slow. I was like, well, what is there to lose, you know? And like I unscrewed it and I looked around at all the parts. Still didn't know what I was looking at. There was no tutorial
Right.
stuff back then. But then I had went to, I think it was like Kmart, and I was in their electronics section, and I saw like sticks of RAM and like hard drives and different stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that looks familiar. Maybe if I replace it, you know, maybe it'll. And that kind of was where my curiosity came from, because you know my mom saw me like, oh, you took the whole, we gave it to you, you took it apart, and I'm like, well, it's slow, it doesn't work. And I ended up you know, spending my allowance to kind of replace some of those parts. And I had a friend who had some different softwares and stuff, as far as like the latest Windows and different things like that. And he came in and updated the computer with the software. And this is when DVD burners had just come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like to get one in it, like a computer that already had one, was like $2,000. But you could buy like just the unit for like $300 or something like that. So I had went and installed it, and DSL had just came out. So then we had DSL internet, and I had, now everybody wanted to use my computer because I could get all the movies and music and fast search engine and everything. So you're right about that. Like being able to take something apart and tinker with it is very important. And for anybody watching, what that breaks down to is a lot of times when we don't have nice things, and then when we get nice things, we have to keep it like pristine. Like when I used to see white kids put stickers on their laptops or on their electronics or on their, I'm like, oh no, like what if you got to sell it one day? Like the survival mentality of like keeping things perfect, not taking it apart, not breaking it, not, you know, costing yourself more money than it already costs to get an item, is like a big thing. And so a lot of times, like I said, when by the time I got that computer, it's because nobody else wanted it, and that allowed me the freedom to go ahead and take it apart because it was going to go in the trash anyways. But had I been like, hey, I know nothing about computers, but I want to take this apart, back when everyone was enjoying it, that could never happen, you know. And it's the same thing with cars and stuff like that. Like it took for me a long time to, you know, go under the hood and start playing with stuff, because I'm like, well, now I got a nice car, I can't risk trying to change these certain things by myself. But once you get comfortable enough, you're like, well, this is simple. This would take me 15 minutes and $50 for a part, versus going to a shop and they're going to take an hour of my time and charge me $300, right? And so that's very important. And you know, I just want to reiterate, like a lot of those programs where computers get, you know, refurbished and donated, or brand new and donated, they work because you're a product of it. In a way, I'm a product of it, and a lot of other people are. So for anybody watching, like if you have a chance to be a part of one of those programs, or you want to start one of those programs with us, Black Tech Talent, like it's definitely worth it.
Right.
So you know, we'll be wrapping up soon. I have two
Okay.
more questions. So what is some advice you would give for someone just coming into technology or just thinking about getting into it?
Um, I think the biggest advice is to try.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I meet so many people that tell me, "Oh, I'm not cut out for tech. I'm not cut out for computer science. I'm not caught up for science in general. Well, how do you know?
Right.
How do you know? Plus, I also want to dispel the myth that tech is only software engineering, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not. There is a bunch of things in tech. There is network engineering, there is tech support, there is data analysis, which is getting big now, and there is software engineering, there is testing engineering. There is a bunch of things you can do in tech. And even in software engineering, there is application development, and you don't have to go all the way to software engineering, right? So there is a bunch of things you can do in tech and in STEM in general. So my number one advice is to just try, give it a
Hmm.
go. Take that class. You don't have to go to school per se. In tech, one of the things that I've noticed over the years, having been in the industry now for close to 10 years now, um, you don't necessarily need a huge degree, right? I've met when I was in the Bay Area, I used to commute with this guy, and that works in X, what we use a lot of people know as Google X, which is the very advanced research arm of it was inside Google prior to Google becoming Alphabet, and it's now a company within Alphabet.
Hmm.
This is the best of the best, right? And this guy only had a high school degree, right? So, and learned on the internet, taught himself, right? Because he came from a poor family and he didn't have any choice. He couldn't go to college. So, trying, go to on the internet, go on Udacity or Udemy, take a couple of classes for 6 months or for a couple of months and see, because you don't know what you are capable of until you try it.
Yes.
The other advice is in tech specifically, it is a fast moving space, right? And very fast changing. You have to keep current. If you get in tech, you have to know that you have to keep current, just keep learning. It's a constant thing that changes all the time. And reading, watching videos, however you learn, you have to keep at it. Keep refreshing your knowledge. Keep at the very forefront of things that will come. Um, I often say to people, one of my core strength is not necessarily being the smartest in the room or anything, but being able to look at changes and keep in front of them, right? That's how what I excel at, or being able to deduct from situations.
Hmm.
And in this particular situation, is looking at how the tech environment is moving, what is working and what isn't working, and trying to keep ahead of it. Especially being black people, we get question on our knowledge and our worthiness of um, being in that space anyway. So making sure that the technical knowledge isn't the reason why you getting dinged for something is really important,
Definitely.
right? Right. So n- knowing your stuff through and through, put in as much time as you can, and just try in the first place. Try in the first place. You don't know until you do it.
Definitely. Great, 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 great advice. So, any last remarks? Anything else you want to just wrap up with and touch on before we go?
Right. Right, a couple things. A couple of things. When you talk, you asked me the first question, what has my journey been um, uh, till here? One thing that I like to go back to um, is I'm the product of a lot of people being in my way and offering to help and assist me. Through I've been fortunate in that way throughout my life, right? And I want to recognize those people. I have in mind people in Minnesota that helped me out when I decided to go to school, and I freshly moved here, not knowing the language. Didn't know how to speak English when I moved here, and but decided to go to college anyway. Um, I think of this guy called Gerard. I went to school with. I moved from St. Paul to Egan. Was going to school in Mendoza Heights,
Mm,
and if you know that area, you know back then there wasn't a whole lot of public transportation back then, and I didn't
yeah,
have a car, and this guy took me to school almost every day, right? To I had some advisors at school that taught me how things work here a little bit in the States, and how I was going to get into debt when I was getting into the school. I didn't know, but they showed me the path to kind of how to deal with that debt once I get out of school. And it wasn't part of their job, but they offered to do it. So I want to recognize that it's been a lot of people that helped me along the way and that contributed to the person that I am today.
it's awesome.
Um, and Second thing that I wanted to say to wrap up here is thank you, Mike. Thank you for being involved first
For sure.
in this fight, in this um, it is an ungrateful work that you're doing, especially with Bitcoin. And we met at Bitcoin. For the people that are watching, next version of Bitcoin, please come through. Thank you for launching this new initiative. Remind me, Black in Tech,
Black Tech
uh,
Talent.
Black Tech Talent. Um, which would allow us to put our talents at the forefront of or in front of some of these big companies, and hopefully make a little bit of dent into our representation uh, in tech in general, and these big companies specifically.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's it needs to be done, and I want to contribute as much as I can. So I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, once again, this is Black Tech Talent. We had Chris on the show today. He's given us a lot of knowledge and wisdom and shared some of his journey, and hopefully that helps everyone watching. On some of their next moves, whether you're a recruiter, trying to figure out kind of how this journey goes and how to be considerate about hiring Black technologists, or whether you're thinking about getting into it, or whether you're a student or entrepreneur. At the end of the day, hopefully we drop some gems and some jewels that you can take with you. And we're out.